Panago Pizza presents SDP, the Steve Dangle Podcast, with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Let's go!
Hey, welcome to the Steve Dangle Podcast. You know, today's a little bit special. And I have to be honest with you, when Steve mentioned the idea, I was like, I don't know, man. Are you sure? And then the more I thought about it, the more it was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have Dr. Jim R. Woodgett. He's the director of research and a senior investigator. Researcher with the Lunenfeld Tannenbaum Research Institute at Mount Sinai Hospital, where I was born and where my daughter was born. And Jim, you're here to answer Dr. Jim, you're here to answer some COVID-19 questions today. Obviously, you know, we're getting some of the basic questions answered, and we're being told by various public services, do this, don't do that. But there are a lot of questions that I think people have that might seem a bit ridiculous. In a vacuum, I guess would be, but in a pandemic situation, they might, be too embarrassed to ask. So that's why we'd like to have you here.
Sounds good.
All right.
Jim's pretty chill.
I feel bad for Jim because I feel like this is something that he has to deal with every single day. So Jim, I think the first question, and I'm going to ask it, comes from me. I have friends that are buying their groceries and they're getting them through, say, something like what we have in Toronto here, Loblaws, PC Express, where you drive up, they give you your groceries, you take your groceries home. I have friends that are disinfecting their chip bags, their any sort of cellophane wrapping, that sort of thing, before they put it in their cupboards. Is that a good thing, a bad thing, waste of time? What would you say to that? Is that a little too much?
It's, the thing is it's really up to people. The biggest concern I think people have is that they can't see the damn virus, and it's the fear of the unknown. And if it makes you feel better, you can do it. There's really not much point. Having said that, the likelihood of the virus surviving on the outside of a packet of crisps or chips or anything is pretty low. But if it makes you feel better, that's fine. The thing to realize though is you can't be too paranoid about that sort of thing. I mean, there are real risks. This is a really nasty virus, and I don't want to sort of undermine the guidance, which is to really keep the distance and to make sure that you don't go to the grocery store very often, only when you have to, and keep your distance from everybody else. But it's the risk associated with virus, say, being on mail or on newspapers, on grocery items is incredibly low. And the same is true actually of things like takeout, right? Just treat it with maybe a little bit of suspicion, if you like. Don't store those bags. Don't rub yourself in them. But the thing is, the virus is actually pretty weak. It's not like bacteria. Bacteria will live for pretty much anywhere. These viruses actually bud out of normal cells, and they're kind of covered in this fatty lipid membrane, and they get popped as soon as they come close to detergents or soap or alcohol. So they're pretty weak. They don't live outside of us very well at all. And that's why you don't really need to worry about it too much.
That's fascinating.
Inside of us,
it's once it, I guess, infects you or whatever, it's very dangerous. But otherwise, it's that's why I was skeptical when people are like, just wash your hands, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that anyway. But there's no way that beats this, monstrous pandemic that we're up against. So really, just washing your hands.
It's really simple. So, and the thing is, people, I think, hear the same thing over and over again, and you get told by your parents and whatever. Everybody tells you wash your hands, but it really is that simple. Just staying distance, keeping distance from people, and actually washing your hands every so often, because as often as you can. Or if you can't wash your hands, then use that sanitizer. That will kill it on your hands. and your hands are a vector, right? There's no, the virus can't actually infect you through your hands. It goes through your nose and your mouth and potentially your eyes as well. That's why, but your hands vector from touching other things and then bringing it to you. So that's the mistake people make with wearing gloves, right? Gloves don't protect your hands. You have to take the gloves off. They're not going to do anything except they're disposable. So people can get a false sense of security from wearing gloves. That's not to say don't wear them, but they're not protecting you really, right?
And I guess
unless you're in a hospital.
So, and it's not just washing your hands. You have to wash it for at least 20 seconds because at the 20-second mark is when it kills the virus, is when the soap kind of activates on your
that's
hands.
actually not true either. I mean, what it is, it's about being thorough. It's not like I've seen Steve go into the washroom and come back out like 5 seconds after he flushes the toilet. That's not good enough, right? It's because you have to be thorough. And the 20-second rule is just to make sure that you're not just putting your hands under the tap. But there's no hard and fast rule. Just be thorough.
We should mention that Steve personally, and I wasn't sure if we were bringing that up or not.
Yeah,
but you guys, there's a connection.
We married into the same family, right?
Married.
Yeah, I'm married. Yeah, I guess that's true. That's absolutely true. What about and like I know you mentioned it's unlikely to survive on surfaces, but we're gonna get the extra paranoid questions. Like the other day, like when I order something that's cooked, I'm like, I mean that's probably fine, but like I got sushi and like I saw someone ask about salad or something like that. Is it equally as unlikely to survive on those surfaces?
No, it can survive, and it can survive. If somebody coughs onto, if they've got COVID-19 and they cough onto your food, there's going to be a lot of virus there, right? The fact is, though, that they are not going to be coughing onto your food. All the people preparing food are wearing masks. They're all wearing gloves. They know about the hygiene. They know that the easiest way to kill their business is to get somebody infected. So I think there's a lot of awareness there, and that's why we have food quality standards and food prep standards. So you have to trust them for sure, and it's also true, as you mentioned, if you're cooking something's being cooked, it's not the virus doesn't survive that. It doesn't. We kill it in the lab. We kill it by putting it at 56 degrees Celsius for half an hour. I mean, it's so pathetic. It's just it really is, and so just warm it up a little bit, simmer it, and it's done. So the thing is, you kind of you sure there could be examples of somebody who was asymptomatic. You can talk about that a little bit, which is they don't know they've got the virus. But if you're asymptomatic, you're not going to be coughing and sneezing, and so the degree of potential spread is also much lower. It's much higher when people are coughing and sneezing.
Along those lines, Kayla wanted to ask, I have baked a lot of goods right now, and I need to give them to my friends because I'm stress baking. If I freeze them first, is it okay to share them with friends, or will freezing not kill the virus?
The baking will kill the virus.
Okay, all right. So, fair enough.
Unless she coughs all over them after taking them out of the oven. I mean, freezing probably doesn't kill the virus, but again, it's not. It's not. It's tiny. This right. These viruses they're tiny. They're like an 80 billionth of an inch. I saw somebody say today, as an astronomer, saying that basically the size of a virus to you is the same proportionally as you to the size of the Earth. Okay, so these are tiny, tiny little things, and which means you can put a lot of them on the head of a pin, right? So there can be you can produce millions of them when you are infectious, but you don't need to so they don't get killed necessarily by freezing, but they're not going to be there. So and she should definitely give her cakes and baking goods away because
makes people happy.
Well, if you look at who gets the virus and who doesn't do well, it tends to be people who are elderly right? We've seen, the real tragedy in the nursing homes, but also people who are significantly overweight don't do so well, and also if you're male. So, yeah,
good.
There's
T-Rex
a risk
20
factor there, and it's basically because men we don't look after ourselves, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's fair.
Is
That's
that
fair.
why?
So
Yes,
T-Rex
Steve, looking at
20's
you.
T-Rex 20's got a question, and I think this is one. There was a lot of rumor swirling about this one, so I'm gonna ask his question, and then I'm gonna kind of broaden it as well. He said, "Is it okay to let people pet my dog if I stay 6 feet away from the person? Do I have to disinfect my dog if someone else pets him?" He really doesn't understand why other people don't pet him anymore, and this goes along with: can dogs and cats spread this, or can they not?
Yeah, I mean, so we've only known about the virus for 5 months, right? So everything we've learned is still, it's in progress. If you got a dog, I would use the dog to keep people more than 6 feet away from you, rather than letting them come and pet the dog. And I also wonder if the dog's feeling sort of left out because it's not being petted. Maybe it's not so happy with you as the owner. I don't know. Because why is it looking for all this affection from strangers? So there are some studies, and they're not particularly great studies, but for example, and there have been some anecdotes in the news. So cats can be infected, but they don't seem to be able to infect us. And likewise, I think there was one dog in Hong Kong. It was I don't know about what happened to that dog, which tested positive. But again, it's very unlikely the dog can give it back. So what happens here is the virus, as I mentioned, if it infects somebody, it infects the mucous membranes, right? And it kills those cells and sort of bursts out of the cells, a little bit like these teeny weeny little aliens. And they're coated in bits of the cell that they infected and killed, right? So those are coated with other human proteins. So that's why the transmission from human to human is pretty good, because they're basically disguised. They have some viral proteins on the outside. They also have some human attributes as well. And that's why, as well, it doesn't transmit between species that well. It was thought to come probably from bats, maybe via pangolins, and who knows. But those are rare events. It's much easier to get it from somebody else. So don't stick Fido outside.
So this is an important question then. So my mother-in-law, and she loves our dogs very much, and we had this plan where we were going to let our dogs spend the weekend there this upcoming weekend. We're not going to come anywhere near them. The dogs will just run to the door. They know they're about to get spoiled for the next couple days, and then they'll run back because they miss us. When we go to pick them up. Would you recommend that we not do that?
Well, I mean, I got to say, we have 2 dogs, as you know, and we did let them be petted by our son who came to visit us on Easter Sunday, because they were kind of missing him. It's the likelihood is pretty low. The temptation, though, this is the problem. The temptation is for you to get close to your family members or to your friends, and that's what really needs to be kept. Don't do that. But it's not a good idea to be exchanging gifts and clothes and whatever between family members who are living apart. If you're living in the same house, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Same house, you're basically in the same environment. But that's the whole point of separation, that you're separating. And we've been pretty much shut down for 4 weeks now. And I'm surprised people haven't asked, how long is it going to last? Because it looked like.
Oh, don't worry. They did. I'm saving that question.
Oh, okay. Because there it's like, you could ask, well, wait a minute, if you're only infectious for 2 weeks, then we're 4 weeks in. How long is it going to go? But the fact is that probably in some people it lasts longer, right? So, yeah, I think your mother-in-law, you got to weigh it up. But I think there's low risk. I'm just wondering whether or not it's because you're fed up of the dogs, or
I love
some quiet time.
Why
I
not?
love the dogs. Even Charlie, who has no idea how a harness works.
Got a question here along those lines, actually. So is there a safe way to change your self-isolation home? How can I see my girlfriend without staying a chara stick apart? So like, this is from Christian. Can you move in with someone mid-pandemic?
Yeah, you can, as long as you remain isolated for another 2 weeks, right? I mean, that's
right.
I mean, the problem, the whole point about it is that it's trying to isolate the virus, so the virus can't find new vectors, new homes. So if either of two people have got it and they don't know about it and they give it to the other person, then that's fine as long as they're isolated. The likelihood is that they're both, if they've been quarantined or they've been in isolation for 3 or 4 weeks now, and they've not come from another country. That's another important element, because other countries like the US, for example, have had a higher level of community exposure and circulation than we have in Canada. Then those people are going to be relatively low risk and they should be okay. But the thing is, you can't just do this to and fro, right? You got to be committed. So it's not for an overnight visit. Put it that way.
How long can it last? And this is another question we have from. Let me just pull it up here. We have a question from Trevor. If we order packages, like say something from Amazon with cardboard, are we at risk?
It's the same as everything else in terms of the grocery bags or the chips or whatever. No, I mean, there's been actually some studies done showing that the virus is viable on cardboard for about 12, maybe to 24 hours. And, so maybe don't order Amazon Prime. But I mean, seriously, that's not a problem. If you're concerned about that, it's like, the postman puts something into your mailbox, then open it up, make sure you throw the wrapper away, the envelope away, the box away, or whatever. And because what's inside is probably very fine. I think as well, so this is why it's important. This is a very fragile virus. It's as I mentioned before, and it's not as though it sticks around. The only place it actually likes to live is inside of us, right? So that's why we don't know of any other potential reservoirs aside from bats and what have you. And unless you have a penchant for eating wild bats, then you're probably okay.
You mentioned that you're able to fry it in a lab at just 56 degrees Celsius. I remember at the beginning of this, there was some talk about, the summer might actually help sort of eradicate it. Is there any truth to that or reason to believe it at all?
So it doesn't look like it's seasonal. And the reason for that is that, if you look at places like Malaysia, Singapore, Iran even, there's no, those are countries which are significantly warmer than we're certainly experiencing today in Canada.
It's snowing, yeah.
But what will probably happen will be, and then we see this normally with coronaviruses, is that they decrease because people don't tend to be congregating inside, bars, and you're more likely to be outside. So, and in parks and what have you. So, the risk of transmission just goes down to some degree. Having said that, there's nothing special about it being warm. The problem with this virus is that it's, in essence, we have no immunity to it at all, right? So this it's sort of completely new. And so none of us had any immunity. And that means that it can hop from person to person with essentially no restrictions. And that's what tends to restrict, for example, influenza virus or other types of viruses, because a fraction of the population is actually naturally immune to a whole bunch of these circulating viruses, which is why, in school, it seems like all the kids get something, but they don't get it all at the same time. And the difference with this virus is that basically if you encounter it, you're going to get it. And you know the severity of the symptoms are very variable. So some people don't realize they get it. Some people think it's like a bad cold, and other people are in the ICU and can die from it. So that's the other critical thing about this virus. Unlike SARS, the first one, which is very, very similar genetically, that virus, you knew when you had it because it basically killed 10% of people who got it. It was mainly hospital acquired. So it was very severe. Mm-hmm. So there was no sort of incubation period. You got the virus and you were sick. This is much, it's a much more dastardly virus because most people don't feel that sick, and so they carry on as if they, not knowing they've got it. And so that's how it spreads. If it was more like the original SARS, it would be much easier to control.
Another question here about everybody wants to know first, and I'm going to ask you about the NHL after this because obviously we've heard some reports today. I'm not sure if you've heard them as well, but Aaron Barrett said, we keep hearing that it will take 12 to 18 months to rush the release of a vaccine. Is it possible that it will take scientists a long time to find a vaccine, or that they won't be able to at all? Or is the timeline just the main concern associated with testing? And is there any way, and I'm going to add to his question, is there any way to, given what's going on in the world right now, speed up that timeline? So if they were able to do what they need to do, is there any way to speed up a vaccination process, or does it have to be 12 to 18 months?
So the important things to remember here are actually, the vaccine is the only way that we get out of this, to be frank, right? Because it's very unlikely there'll be drugs which will, therapies which will help. There may be therapies which will mitigate or reduce the likelihood of the severity, and that could be very important, especially if it reduces hospitalization. But the vaccine is essentially, because of this lack of immunity, the vaccine is the only way that we return to whatever normal is. The important thing, though, to remember about vaccines is that there are actually, I think, 78 different vaccine candidates which have already been generated. It doesn't take long to generate the candidates for vaccines. It's to determine whether or not they work or not, right? And that's what takes the time. So that you have to go through the first, it's like with all drugs, you have to go through safety tests, right? Which means that you don't want to cause disease. And in fact, some vaccines can cause disease. They don't get released because they we realize there's a problem. So they can actually, I would say cause disease. What they can do is exacerbate the symptoms of a disease. They can actually boost the immune system in the wrong way. So that's rare, but they're caught in the early testing phases. Then you've got to sort of look at how efficacious the vaccine is, because it's not very good if it's only going to protect 50% of the people who get vaccinated, right? And then the other questions are, well, what if the vaccine, how long is the vaccine very effective in providing immunity, and how long does that immunity last? We don't even know. For people who've had the coronavirus, they get antibodies, and we can test that. And they've got some sort of immunity, right? We don't know how long that immunity lasts. So that's why there's just so much unknown now. Now, because of the trillions of dollars in the economy it's costing with all the social distancing and closing down factories and everything else, you can bet that there's so much activity going on to actually move the vaccines along. But it's a little bit like going to Mars. It takes a certain amount of time with the fastest rocket ship, and there's nothing you can do to, Elon Musk can't reduce that. And that's the way it is, unfortunately, with the vaccine. So that's why we're basically buying time, right, until the vaccine comes. Now, and this technology isn't particularly new, right? We've made vaccines, we know how to do them. But Bill Gates, for example, the Gates Foundation, is actually building, they're going to look at the 7 best candidates without knowing the outcome. They're going to build factories which will produce those vaccines, knowing full well that some of them are not going to work. And the reason for that is that once they realize which one works, it would then take another 6 months or 3 months or whatever to build the factories, to build them, to make the vaccines available. So they're trying to cut these corners wherever they can. but it's still going to be at least 12, probably 18 months. And that's with a bit of luck. So unfortunately, we can't do anything. We just can't get it faster. And it's not as though if you had, if somebody suddenly, had it said, I'll give you $1 million to vaccinate me. There's nothing we can do. This is not something money can buy.
Wow. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who you've no doubt seen on the news over and over and over again, put out basically he was asked on Fox this morning, how do sports return? Because obviously one of the biggest initiatives in North America, especially for Trump, is, Trump, I don't agree with much on Trump, but I would love sport as long as it's safe. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci says that there is a way to do it. And he said the way to do it this summer is nobody comes to the stadium. You put the players in big hotels wherever you want them to play, and you keep them very well surveilled. You have them tested every single week and make sure they don't wind up infecting each other or their family, and just let the season and just let them play the season out. Wanted to get your thoughts on something like that. So what the NHL has considered doing is maybe cordoning off 4 areas in North America. Everybody in, the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southeast, the Southwest plays their games, finishes out their playoff series, and you don't really have to move them until probably the conference finals. So that's a couple rounds in. Do you think that something like that is possible to pull off? Can you really corral 700 athletes or something like that? Or maybe I guess it's half of them, so it's 350 to do and get on board with something like this.
Yeah, I can remember, at the time when when the NBA closed down, LeBron James says, "There's no way I'm going to play if there isn't an audience." Somebody might want to ask him now if he feels the same way, and he's probably going to say, "Just give me a ball," right? So, yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things there. One is that there's no way we're going to have 10, 15, 20,000 people sitting in a stadium this year. It's just not on, because no matter what happens, the level of immunity, the so-called herd immunity, will never be sufficient. And the risk of just one person being in close proximity with others, you're just going to get another massive spread. So, the first time that happens, everything gets shut down again. And so that's not going to happen. So, but it's perfectly reasonable to say, if the players want to do this, that they basically sequester themselves. It means they're going to have to stay away from their families, but some of them do that in the playoffs anyway, right? Yeah. So, and they're going to have to reconfigure. But I mean, geez, they've got this, millions and millions of people stuck at home, getting pretty sick of watching, the Coronation Street or whatever. And I think they kind of want, there's a bit of an appetite there, and it'll be exciting. So I think they'll work it out, right? Because there's one thing that professional sports is pretty good at doing. It's converting, about 90 minutes or 2 hours into a lot of dollars, and that's what they're missing right now. And so I think that we'll probably see this differently in the different types of sports. But what we're not going to see is, what some people were floating as, like a skills competition. Nobody wants to. No, how many people watch that in the All-Star break? Come on. Yeah, but what you want to see is people basically battling other people. And the thing is as well, you can't, especially in actually it's true in all of these sports. There's no way to have a non-contact professional sport, right? So there's no way you can have hockey where people have to stay 6 feet apart. That would be worse than not watching. So yeah, they're gonna bulldoze into each other, and they're gonna be doing the usual stuff. Likewise in basketball, the NFL. Geez. So I think I guess the only sport would be baseball. They can kind of keep it somewhat.
That's sort of the sport. It's socially isolated sport.
Absolutely. Who watches it? I don't know. Anyway, but I think that you're going to see that sort of innovation, if you want to call it innovation. But I think it's true. I mean, it's interesting to see that it's what people are looking for in terms of sport, and you can think about things like video games, right? Because that can be done in isolation. Nobody's really watching that. They don't want that. They won't really want people bouncing off each other and to be seeing real action. So I think that's what we'll see in probably the next three months or so. When I think the leagues realize that this is not going to go away this year, and everybody's been optimistic and they were hoping, it's just not going to happen.
Jesse, you were going to ask a question.
Yeah, Michael Beeson tweeted in and he asked, when will beer league hockey return? So when does sports, if the timeline is 12 to 18 months for a vaccine, is that the same timeline for just restaurants opening or rec league sports for regular people?
When can I go back to the gym?
Yeah.
I think that's a good question. So, what's going to happen? And there's been a lot of talk about this as people have been sort of realizing as it's sort of settle in that this is not going to go away. So we got to think about so how do you get out of it? And it's not going to be that, what happened 4 weeks ago was essentially everything slammed, everything came to a stop all at once. What's going to happen is we're going to see relief of some of the restrictions. There's going to be more industries or more types of work allowed. You're going to have, how that plays out, who knows? But there's also going to be a lot more surveillance. There's going to have to be, when it's a flare-up, people are going to have to be willing to go into self-isolation, which is going to be tough, but it probably won't be at the societal level. There's going to be a lot less travel. You're not going to be going back to the movies, that sort of thing. So there's going to be lots of changes, but it will get better. And the reason I say that is because the alternative is that we stay as we are. And there's two problems with that. One is we can't afford it. And number two is that people won't accept it, right? So the degree of compliance is going to drop. And so people are going to try and cheat. And it's understandable, right? So you want to see people and get on with your life. And then people will start to say, well, geez, I'm young. It's not going to affect me so much. I'll go out and get it. I don't care. That's the worst case scenario, because it's not what happens to you, it's what happens to the people you then encounter. And because you don't know if somebody is immunosuppressed, for example, or on chemotherapy or whatever. So I think what we'll see is this sort of staging of relaxation of the restrictions, but it'll be done in a relatively controlled manner. But unfortunately, it's the big events are going to be very difficult. That's really is going to have to wait until there's widespread vaccination. I mean, then there's also a sort of worst case scenario there. If we do generate vaccines and the vaccines only give you partial immunity, then you got to start. That means really it becomes part of society. That there's going to be at some point somebody's going to be always getting sick. But that becomes again a bit more controllable. So it may well be that we never actually get completely rid of this virus. And it also potentially it does mutate, but so far it's not mutated to be any worse than it is. So this is the thing. I mean, we got a warning with SARS, a big warning, and then in 2009 with H1N1, and we sort of just thought, it wasn't a big problem, and we can control it. Those were warnings, and we, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, this could happen again. So I think we have to. That's why I think we do have to change a lot of the ways that society thinks about preparing, and it's going to change the way we live our lives to some degree.
Interesting. Wow. Well, I feel more educated.
Yeah, me too. We had. Do we have time for like a couple more quick ones?
Yes.
Just a couple more quick. So Jessica wanted to know, so they've been walking their dog the same 3 loops around the neighborhood. And it doesn't have to be the dog, right? It can just be people losing their mind. Would it be frowned upon, and I can imagine your answer to this, to drive to another neighborhood and walk your dog or go for a walk in that neighborhood?
Well, I don't know. It's like social acceptability, right? I mean, I don't know. It's getting pretty boring. living where we're living. You know, you're stuck in the same four walls and in the same neighborhood. It's not something to encourage, but gas is cheap, and yeah, it's kind of, you know, it is kind of ridiculous. And I think I want to clarify that because, you know, there are so-called essential workers, right? And the most essential workers are the people who are working in the grocery stores and emptying the garbage. Of course, people working in the hospitals. There's lots of those, and they have to do that. They have to go out, right? So it's kind of, we're kind of giving people a finger if you're saying that, you know, I'm not essential, but I'm still going to kind of go out. But you can kind of see why people want to do that. I think it's a bit of a mistake, for example, in closing the parks. That's a shame. People need to get out, but how do you do it safely? And the problem was that people were just aggregating in groups. If we behaved, if we said, you know, we will stay away from each other, we will be careful, which we should be, then the parks are huge. You could limit the number of people to in some way, but I think we can overreact to this. And I think the problem with overreacting is that people then are going to get really pissed off and are going to start breaking those rules. So, you know, I think that's why we've got to find some sort of a middle ground, and that's what will happen with this gradation of reduction of the restrictions. Those sorts of issues are going to become less restrictive. But if people start abusing it, we'll be in a bad place again.
Right.
And the last one I wanted to ask, just because
it's not about a dog, is it?
Nope. It's about another animal, though. And even though
dog questions today.
No, yeah, I know. Even though it was snowing outside today, I've already killed a mosquito.
I think this podcast, half the audience must be dogs. Come on.
It's a big dog podcast. It's also a big tiger cake podcast. It's been a lot of things lately. I've already killed a mosquito in my house this year. The season's approaching. Will the virus spread via mosquito biting someone who has it and then maybe biting me or Adam?
Why me?
I don't know.
Well,
I've never been bitten by a mosquito. I killed them all. No, I'm kidding.
Jesse's too handsome to get bitten.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, so mosquitoes. Not much you can do about them. You're going to get bitten if you go outside. If you stay inside, the likelihood of a mosquito being a vector for COVID-19 is very, very, very low, and there's a number of reasons for that. So the life cycle. So what happens? So if let's take a virus which is transmitted, right? West Nile, right? Mm-hmm. So West Nile virus is able to live in the gut of a mosquito, and it's adapted to do that. And it also can live in, it can be transmitted via, of course, the blood meals. With the coronavirus, it's very, very low levels in people who are infected in their blood. It probably is detectable, but it's low. But if you imagine the amount of material which a mosquito sucks out of your vein, out of your blood, and a bite, it's tiny, tiny amounts. You'd have to be pretty heavily infected in your blood, which is not the case. Then that virus has to survive in the actual mosquito, and the mosquito, once it's eaten, once it's got a blood meal, that lasts it for several days because they blow up. If you look at the one where after it's bitten you, they're all red. They've got this big belly, and then they live off that for a couple of days. So then the virus has got to survive that long in the mosquito, and then it's got to go and infect. It's got to inject it back into another person. So the likelihood is incredibly low. It's not zero, but the problem is, with all these things, going back to the very first question, what is your relative risk of contracting this from a bag of chips? It's not infinitesimally small, but it's really, really, really small. And we have a really, really difficult, we're really bad as people, as humans, at basically understanding relative risk, all right? And because of that, it's like you want to do everything you can. You can't reduce the risk to zero, but it's like At the same time, we buy lottery tickets where the chances of winning are almost zero, but we still buy the lottery tickets, right? So it works both ways. So I think, the answer is that it's incredibly unlikely, and we're in deep shit if that's the case. But it's in countries where there is sort of endemic mosquito populations. There's not been any cases traced to that. That doesn't, absence of evidence doesn't mean it can't occur. But yeah, I doubt it. Doubt it's going to happen. Don't worry about that.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, Jim, Dr. Jim, I got to tell you that this has been great, and it's great to get some of the more ridiculous questions, at least ones that you feel like, how there are in classes, like, well, there are no stupid questions. It's just that they continue to cover the same questions over and over and over on the news. And sometimes you don't get true questions answered. And then you get, a bunch of rumors spread. So Dr. Jim R. Woodgett, Director of Research and Senior Investigator at the Lunenburg Tannenbaum Research Institute. And thank you so much for making time for us today, because with a title like that, you should absolutely not have time enough for this podcast, but we do appreciate it.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Jim.
Good talking to you, Adam.
Thanks, you.
Jim.
Appreciate it, man.
Well, I feel like I learned something, which is good. And it is sort of strange, the turn of events today, especially. Like, I was watching before this happened, Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, talking about what the next sort of steps look like. And obviously, as we just heard, physical distancing will still be a thing. It'll be very slowly rolled out, but they're now starting to talk about what it looks on the other side of this when things start to relax a little bit. So, because it's just been kind of doom and gloom for a long time, and the death rates, especially in the States, are still not good at all, but they are plateauing, and then they are expecting to go down. And we're also hearing about the NHL, and Gary Bettman was on Fox today talking about this, and he says that they are, it looks like they'll have to play into the summer, and that they're totally cool with that. And it's interesting because I've got here in front of me a list of the free agents that are probably bound to be the top guys this year. And you have to think it's weird for them. They probably were thinking, a lot of these guys, I'm going to get a huge payout on July 1st. And it may end up being like August 1st or September 1st before they see that money. And the second thing is, how much money will it really be?
This has been the fascinating thing. Like, the only players we've seen signed, and I guess there's good reason for this, obviously, they haven't canceled the season yet, but the only players we're seeing signed are like college free agents. There's been a couple European players and Russian players, but most of them were already draft picks. I just don't know how you financially plan, unless it's a guy on a contract for less than $1 million. And I don't think I've seen anyone on a contract for less than $1 million. In fact, there was a guy, Okulov, I think was his name, out of the KHL, who was looking at signing with the Leafs or Habs, and he's opted to, forget it, I'm just going to play in Russia another year. Just because of the uncertainty.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You just can't tell. Yeah. And in Russia, there's like a cap, but there isn't like a cap. It's like Russian rules.
No.
Can I give you guys two options?
I mean,
yeah.
What are the options?
Can I give you a blue pill or a red pill? So
okay.
Gary Bettman says we can do the Stanley Cup playoffs in September and then start the 2021 season in January and do a half season. Or we start the next season in September and we just cancel the rest of the playoffs. Would you rather have an answer and then a full season, or some sort of tournament for the playoffs and then a half season the following year? Which one would you rather have?
Half season. Easy.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the regular season, man. I don't need to go right back to the boring ass regular season in September. Screw that, man. Give me tournament for the playoffs, and then 48 game season that is super intense and crazy, and that the Leafs make it before they fall off a cliff.
I think I've changed my mind a little bit on it's not a real cup. This cup is going to be incredibly hard to win. You know what I mean? Like, if we start it's 4 7-game series, it's incredibly hard. And even if they shorten them, like, you have all agreed on what the end of the road is, right? So let's say it's best of 3. You're going to play every game like it's game 5, 6, and 7. There's going to be no feeling out. There will be no jabs thrown in these fights. It's just going to be all haymakers, right?
Yep.
Every hit will be harder. It's going to be reckless abandon because they're not going to be crisp. It's going to be some insane stuff. Like we look at the 2013 Cup as legitimate, and it is, but it's different.
Okay,
it's legitimate, but it'll be the same thing.
It's playoff. They played a full playoff.
It's
The Hawks were gonna
legitimate.
make it. They played it.
It's legitimate, but it's a little different.
Right.
It's
like
not the same as an 82 game Stanley Cup playoffs, you know.
And
but it was just as hard.
Just as hard, yeah.
It was just as hard, and the best team won easily. Like the Blackhawks were easily.
Yeah,
the best.
the
Oh yeah,
Blackhawks
the best team definitely won. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but sometimes
But-
that doesn't happen. Like last year,
Well, like the Leafs got in, and they shouldn't have
been there. Exactly.
They should never have been there.
Like who knows if there's an 82 game season, the Blackhawks don't fold like the Lightning did. You know, who knows if it's 48 games, the Lightning probably win last year because they were on a roll for the first 82, and then after on the 83rd game, they fell off a cliff. You know, so who knows what happens if there's an actual timeline, but you can't go back in time and change that.
If there's
Right,
anything,
and I think like life, you've got to also say things happen in the world. Strikes happen, lockouts happen, pandemics happen, and sort of you have to play the hand you're dealt. And so for anybody that's suggesting that the Drew Doughty quote this week was ridiculous. Like if he had won the cup instead of the Blackhawks that year,
In
I don't think he'd be
2013.
saying, I don't think he'd be saying, it's not going to be like the real, like actually winning the cup. Like, come on, what a stupid quote. And also, why does anyone care what Drew Doughty says? He's not going to make it. I just
well, that's why.
I think in this particular context, in the world that we live in, you play the hand, and I like the idea because the NHL is so good at stretching out nonsense. I love the idea of 2 compact seasons.
You're back.
Oh, did you lose me?
Yeah.
Did you lose
Yes.
me? Am I back? My
You're back.
internet
All right.
sucked. So if
Can
it's,
you
if it's out,
repeat
just sorry.
what you were saying for the last minute?
If all I'm saying, for the entire minute.
Yeah, you're a little. When you started answering the question, you kind of went all robotic.
About 20
and you cut out
seconds.
for me. Yeah.
So listen, I am Megatron, and secondly, it's really important that the NHL do it in 2 like with the play in for the playoffs, and then the playoffs, and then a shortened regular season. They are so good at stretching out this regular season. They're so good at stretching out thin content. You know, like Tuesday nighters that are, 2 West Coast teams. No offense to those local markets, but it's like, they're here's the Coyotes taking on the, I don't know, who cares, and it's just sort of.
Why do you hate Wednesday night hockey?
Well, I don't. It's a Tuesday night, but
Yeah, you
the
bastard.
I hate Wednesday night hockey when that guy Dangles on. That's when I angrily leave comments on their Facebook page.
Yeah, that cook.
But in all honesty, like, let's see the best teams go at it fully healthy. They're going to be fully healthy. Like, all of these teams, all their big stars are going to be back, and they're going to be fully healthy, and then they're going into the playoffs. And then they're going to have like a month or 2 off, and then it's a 48-game season. So those points that 2 points in a 48-game season mean it's more like 3.5 points every time you win. You know what I mean? Those points mean more. So there's more on the line every time you play, and you don't have the boring January, February doldrums that the Leafs specifically seem to fall into. And I think all NHL teams talk about this, is that January and February are tough times to be hockey players. Man, wouldn't it be great to just eliminate the 2 bullshit months of the year?
Cut the
and just
fat.
go right into the fun stuff?
Yeah, I don't
we're cutting down on the crap. Let's go. This is going to be great.
I don't like how you're criticizing.
There.
I don't like how you're criticizing the 82 game season because you're diminishing the rest of the season.
It's boring as shit.
January and February have to exist so that we get November, December, June, May.
Yes.
We get all the other months.
Yes.
And so January and February have to exist too. We need all of
And I had to take math in high school. Doesn't mean I like it.
I feel like
Right?
Adam is Jim Gaffigan at the buffet right now. If no one else was here, I'd just eat bacon. That's all you're doing. You know damn well the only reason you have veggies at the buffet is because you think you're supposed to, like society tells you to. Now, if you spread the season out, obviously 82 games, the 4 rounds of the playoffs, you're playing over 100 games. You assume the best team wins every year. That is almost never the case.
Yeah,
like
that's the fun of sports.
Yes, that's the fun of
you play to win the games. You got to play the games. Yeah.
Right, but what I think 2013 did is they showed that the best teams, the most prepared teams, will rise to the top. And I think maybe some of the worry with will this be a legitimate cup is we think some team is going to fluke their way to it. It's not going to happen. You're coming out of this, you're hitting the ground running, and then you have basically 4 wars that you have to win. The best team will win.
In it. Yeah.
And Drew Doughty's team will not be in it.
And all 3 of his remaining teeth.
Who are the top 4 teams in the NHL heading into when the season stopped? The top 4 teams in the standings. Like, do we think Boston is getting knocked out first round? No. Like if it comes back, no. It's the best, most prepared teams, I think, will rise to the top, and it'll be a legit cup. It'll be very similar to 2013, I think.
If anybody's arguing whether or not the cup's legitimate, then that's they can have that argument with themselves as far as I'm concerned. You can't help world events, right? World events are world events are world events.
The only way anyone will make that argument is if the Leafs win. Let's be honest.
And I don't care. if the Leafs win the cup, I'll be naked in the streets. Honest to God.
You won't.
I don't.
No,
I will be 6 feet away from people,
Yeah.
but I will be naked in the streets celebrating
You
for at
probably
least
shouldn't
30
go
seconds.
outside. Yeah, don't go outside.
Fine, I'll be naked in my house celebrating, whatever it takes.
Also, no one
I
wants to
will
see that.
shed my clothing. But, listen, I think any way that the NHL can seize this opportunity, if you look at this from an entertainment perspective, the NHL's biggest problem is that casual fans don't understand what the hell has happened. But when the playoffs happen, you could start to see a lot of interest from the NHL coming in from people that are maybe just casual fans during the regular season. If you make a highly competitive play-in that nobody's seen before, and then you make the playoffs, and then you have a 48-game extremely competitive season, and then another competitive playoff, and the NHL's playoffs are always good, you are going to have an opportunity while everybody sits at home, can't go to restaurants, can't go to concerts, can't do anything else, to have a captive audience and to build this sport to where we all want it to go. Like, this is an enormous opportunity for the NHL. So the only option for me is play the most competitive games you possibly can. And I don't care if anybody thinks it's an illegitimate cup. They are not looking at the entertainment value, which is what hockey is. It's supposed to be entertainment. Look at hockey the way that Vince McMahon looks at the WWE. It's about what garners the most attention, the most headlines, the most eyeballs. How much money, as Dr. Jim said, how much money can you make in 3 hours? That's what it's about. And I'm personally super freaking pumped to see a completely fresh playoff where it's not like, like for instance, like let's say Kucherov goes down right before the playoffs, or the years that Stamkos has been hobbling into the playoffs. I'm excited to see a fully healthy Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm scared for the Leafs.
Freddie Anderson gets decked in the head in Game 81 by Tom frigging Sestito, who would never be in the Penguins lineup had they not been ravaged by injury as well.
Right.
Heading into the playoffs. So
a completely healthy playoffs is something that you should want to see.
The
That's
best
something
teams
that
will
you should
win.
want to be about.
The best team will win. Yeah.
And even if they don't, who cares? It's the cup final. Woo!
Yeah. It's a cup. There's no asterisk on it. It's different, but it's a cup. If that makes any sense.
You're different.
You're different.
Yeah.
You're different.
I think legitimate and illegitimate is the wrong word to use. It's just different.
Different.
Yeah.
2013 is different.
Yeah. This is
It
different.
also helps that the Blackhawks won, and it's just one of the 3 that they had. It'll be weird if you're ending a long drought like the Leafs or Flyers, or if it's your first one.
It's the Leafs. Who cares? Who cares?
No, I
Just
know.
win the damn cup. Who cares?
No, but
Who cares? Just win it. Who cares?
it's a different
Who
point.
cares?
Yeah.
The point is fucking win the cup, please.
Yeah.
If you could just win the cup
It'd be
once.
weird.
Adam's
It'd be
right.
weird. It'd be weird to end it in this way. But yeah, it's still a cup win, but it'd be weird to end it in this way.
Listen, Pete Blackburn would come up with some burned tweet for the Leafs and it'd be like, yeah, of course it would take a shortened season, but he'd do it in a creative way. And it would be hilarious. And I'd probably retweet it, but we'd still have a cup.
Yep.
But you're right.
Get
It
on
is
there.
different. But
Yeah.
I think that's sort of what makes this so cool.
Yeah.
There are factors
100%.
at play here. There are factors at play here that are just like once in a century. You know,
Mhm.
this is nuts.
Yeah,
And-
different isn't a bad thing. I don't think anybody would argue that.
Drew Doughty would.
Drew Doughty would. But I think the playoffs that might come out of all of the different major sports, we might see the best like run of sports we've ever seen in our lifetime. And that's going to be the greatest thing ever. It's just
The demand is going to be ravenous. A big reason why my channel took off after 5 years of basically nobody watching it was everyone was horny for hockey.
Yeah.
Once the lockout ended, and who's this guy? Brrr, and the numbers just sort of went up from there.
Do you think you can change your channel to Horny for Hockey? Is it too late to change the name?
See, we already set it into a mic. It's been taken.
Yeah.
It must have been taken.
Okay, fair. All right. Now, if the playoffs started, the play-ins would look something like this from what we understand. Because you've got, from what I understand, the top 3 teams in each division would be safe. And then you would have 4, possibly 5 teams playing in for the final 2 wildcard spots. I don't know how they would do this because if I'm looking at the Eastern Conference, okay, so you've got Boston, Tampa, Toronto, Washington, Philly, Pittsburgh safe. If you wanted to play for the wild card, you'd have a pretty legitimate 4-team race here. You've got the Rangers and the Islanders. And how fun would that be seeing those two go head-to-head for a wild card spot?
Spectacular.
You've got Columbus and Carolina. You know, Columbus, who was fighting and clawing to get into the playoffs with, you know, after being absolutely decimated in the offseason. And then Carolina, which is sort of still a young upstart team that's finally got some goaltending and look really, really good. But here's the thing. If it's only those 4 teams,
it should be
one
5,
team on the outside.
isn't it?
If it is 5, then you include Florida.
Yeah.
But my question is, can you do it with 5, or do you need an even number or an odd number of teams? Do you know what I mean?
I think you give Carolina a first round bye, and then the other 2 play off in single elimination.
Because you got
Oh,
you got Carolina, Columbus tied at 81 points. You got the Islanders at 80 points, the Rangers at 79, Florida at 78, and then it falls way off after that.
can we talk about the shitty, very shitty, all the way shitty, get rid of it forever shitty point system? The Carolina Hurricanes have 38 wins.
Yeah.
The Columbus Blue Jackets have 33. Same
They're
amount.
tied.
Same amount of the
Also
Hurricanes.
2 less games though.
Yeah, but the Hurricanes committed the terrible sin of losing 5 games in overtime. The Blue Jackets have lost
15.
15. This
Not so great of a
system
story.
Sucks. Sucks. We're talking about a play-in? Get out of here, Columbus. Get out of... That's awful. We're talking about legitimate and illegitimate. The entire standings are illegitimate. If you're going to have losses be half a win. Jesus, look. The goal differential is plus 29 for Carolina. It's minus 7 for Columbus. Get lost. Get lost forever.
So maybe you do need to give Carolina a first round bye just because that's ridiculous.
I was going to fight back, and I was going to be like, no, that's not fair. They're tied in points. Frig off. Okay. Columbus, with their 33 wins, have fewer. Okay, there are 1, 2, 3. There are 3 teams in the Eastern Conference below them with more wins.
Yeah.
The Rangers have 4 more. Oh, the system sucks. Oh, that's terrible. That's an embarrassment. Good God. Sorry, I haven't looked at the standings in a long time, evidently.
It'd be cool
my
to see the NHL go to wins and losses.
Oh,
Just like if you lose in overtime, it's a loss.
Please.
Yeah.
It's right there. Why don't they do it? I don't get it. It's like
Oh.
it doesn't. I mean, the NBA's got parity, and they have ridiculous like all-star stuff. Like, but you look at some of the NBA playoff races; they're pretty tight.
Columbus has the 3rd fewest goals in the East. Frig off. Get out of here.
Okay, so now
That's
let's look.
horrible.
Let's look at the Western Conference. So, assuming that you have a 5-team play-in, am I still here?
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
but I was
you're-
going to
you're
say
good.
now all the Columbus fans are going to yell at me. the 5 wins difference, Carolina's 5-0 in the shootout. Get rid of the shootout, go to wins and losses, and fuck off.
St. Louis, Colorado, Dallas in the Central would be safe. Vegas, Edmonton, Calgary, which would mean an Edmonton, Calgary first round would be safe. Winnipeg, Nashville are the 2 teams. And again, Winnipeg, another team that was decimated in the offseason. They are now, they've played 2 more games than the Predators, but they are 2 points up with 80. Nashville's got 78. Vancouver, with 1 less win than Nashville, is still sitting on the outside because they're
One more win.
One more win.
Sorry, 1 more win than Nashville, but they're sitting on the outside because they're head-to-head. Vancouver's lost more games against Nashville than the other way around. And then you've got the Minnesota Wild and somehow the Arizona Coyotes as well. So if you were going to do 5 teams, those would be your 5 teams. It has to, I mean, along those lines, Steve, that's got to be annoying for the Vancouver Canucks as well. Even 1 win differential doesn't seem to make sense.
Oh boy.
Now,
it's really tough. It's what about something like this? Okay, so we look at the East. Who's still in the playoff hunt?
It's Florida.
Those
so
teams.
Florida,
Right.
New York, Islanders, Carolina, Columbus.
Yeah, so Montreal and their 71 points can get lost, and everyone below them can get lost.
Buffalo,
So-
New Jersey. Yeah.
So I say Carolina gets a bye.
Mm-hmm.
Florida versus New York. Losers eliminated. Islanders versus Columbus. Losers eliminated. And then the winner of those 2 head-to-heads, they go against each other. The winner makes the playoffs in the final wild
What do
card
you do in
seed.
the West? What do you do in the West? Because
What
you
do you,
can't make it different. It's got
You
to be
can. I think you
can't
can.
make the
I think,
cannot-
well,
you
okay.
cannot-
There's
you
a
can't
there's
make-
a
teams we got?
global
1, 2, 3,
pandemic
4.
going on. I think you can make it different. I
Well,
think
you-
you include the Blackhawks and you play some other system.
Well, the question is not whether you include the Hawks. It's the Coyotes. Do you include them?
No,
They're-
I
the
go further.
Coyotes.
I go further down. I include the Coyotes and Blackhawks.
Would you include Montreal then?
No, that's 1 extra team, though.
Yeah.
So,
And
no,
then you
if you're
figure
the
out some-
Blackhawks, too bad, so sad.
No,
If you're the Blackhawks, too bad, so sad.
The Blackhawks are only 6 points back of the second wild card.
Two less
that's a
than
lot.
Arizona.
in the West.
2 less than Arizona.
Nope. Here is my argument. There are already more teams in the West.
Oh,
1 more team in the West.
So what if both wild card teams then, and this is so unfair to Winnipeg, they have 80 points. They have more than Calgary.
37 wins too.
They got to play in then.
Oh.
Except, okay.
I don't think you can make it different, guys. I really don't.
Here's
But
how
anyway.
you make it more fair.
Also,
So
there's less teams in the West. I did it backwards.
Is there? Okay.
Oh, well then frig off. No, Chicago misses.
Yeah, bye, Chicago.
Get lost. They
Let's
miss.
stop helping Chicago with stuff,
It's
okay?
2
They're
teams.
okay.
It's
Stop
2
helping Chicago.
The way to make it fair, I would say let the top seed. So okay, we go to the West. It's Nashville is the top seed in this little tournament. Then there's Minnesota, Arizona. Wait, did I screw this up? Nashville, then Vancouver, Minnesota, and Arizona. Nashville gets to pick which one of those 3 teams they play. How's that? Does that make sense?
Why?
Because they're the top seed.
No.
They're in a playoff spot.
You can't.
Why don't they
okay,
just play the lowest seed?
Yeah, why don't you just do what you did on the other
Because
one?
maybe the Coyotes run their show. I don't know.
I think
What?
what you do is you make it the same for both.
Yeah.
No,
No, I
yeah.
do that in the East too.
I do 6-team tournament, include the Blackhawks.
And
They're too close. They're too close. No, the Canadians, screw them. It's 5
Well,
teams.
the Canadians are 6 though. That's
no,
where
it's
you have to include the
5
Canadians.
5 teams in the East, 6 in the West.
Ooh, you'd have
Yep.
a tough time
No.
selling that.
No.
That-
You'd have
A tough time selling. Let's cancel the season for 3 months and then come back.
No.
This is the land
think
of
you're not
let's
gonna sell
try
that.
stuff.
Oof.
I'm sorry that I'm more open than you guys to trying. new things. I didn't know we had to play
Listen
by
to
the
this
rules.
guy.
You know?
TFG.
All the Blackhawk fans right now are on my side. So
Okay, what about this?
Well,
What about this? To make it more fair, perhaps,
Mhm.
you go to 1 to 8 instead of this goofy bullshit format that we have. and all of a sudden maybe Calgary's in the mix because Calgary's only got the 79 points.
You're not.
That
you're
pushes
not changing,
Winnipeg up as they should be because they have more
the
points.
You're not changing the whole guys. Realistic.
You can do whatever you want.
There's no way.
You can do whatever
you're
you
not
want.
changing the
No.
division system.
Yes, you are.
You're not going to change the division system.
Yeah,
you know
yep.
that.
I think
we're going
you
to
can.
do that because it's dumb, and I agree. They
Yeah.
would have done that.
You
But
can
they're
make
not
the Stanley
gonna do
Cup
that.
out of felt and
I can
turn
tell
it into
you,
a hat. You can do whatever you
all
want.
the
You can do whatever you
teams-
want.
All
Do
the,
whatever you want.
all the teams. Okay, or you just roll it back to game 68, which every team has played, and you go from there. Whatever
No,
the
that's
standings
true.
are, that's what they are.
What if
Okay.
we?
Well, the
What if
thing
we're
is
in a
that you-
global pandemic and you can do whatever you want?
I want a Stanley Cup hat.
Why do Steve and Adam hate Chicago? Please tweet me on reasons why they hate the entire city of Chicago.
Because
Thank you.
deep dish pizza isn't
Oh.
a pizza. It's something else. It's something else entirely. I don't know. I've never had it. I don't know. Like people,
I've heard it's really good.
yeah, but people hate it. Like they're like this
Really?
fucking new people from New York are like Chicago deep dish pizza. Puh. They
There
think it's a disgrace.
There is a rivalry between the two cities, I think.
There is.
I think
It's,
that's
have
right.
you ever seen that clip of there's a lady on some talk show, they had this Italian chef on, he's got this hey bibbity bobbity accent, and she's like, what if you added like some like sauteed carrots or something to this? And he's like, well, if I had wheels I would be a bike. Like you can't just change the recipe. So, that's how New Yorkers talk about Chicago deep dish pizza. Did we lose? Look at the face he froze on.
Adam okay, he's back.
Man, that was very funny.
The face you froze on was.
Why would you? What's wrong? Yo, what's wrong with that person? She wants to put carrots on a pizza. Is she out of her mind?
Just I was with him 1,000%.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
was with him
for sure.
1,000%. The look he gave her. Oh my God! I gotta send it to you guys later. If I had wheels, I would be a bike. Friggin' great.
So my internet sucks, and I can't bring up the fact that I can't my active computer. But here are the free agents.
They didn't hear what you couldn't bring up.
Here's what I want.
What did you ack a few? What?
Sorry, I couldn't free agents because my
Oh.
internet sucks for some reason. Hello,
Rogers,
Hello?
folks.
hello.
Always,
Hello?
always go Rogers.
No, he probably has Rogers.
No, I doubt it. I doubt it.
Oh, now there you are.
Hey,
Hi.
God, my Rogers internet keeps blowing out on me.
There you go.
Holy.
Yeah, you have
I've
that
been told
Rogers
to change
Ignite.
to Bell for years, and I was like, no, I know, I'm pretty loyal, but I might have to change.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure Virgin Radio's Adam Wilde is super loyal to Rogers. Frick off.
That's very funny.
I'll have to call Bell's superior customer service.
Bell
Find out
Internet.
what my options are.
You should definitely switch to Fibe.
Ooh, that sounds like a fun name.
Yeah.
You know,
That
you
sounds
can't
like a
talk
made-up
into your
thing.
remote, but
Oh,
it's
that
much
sucks.
faster.
Can I tell you, I love talking into my Rogers Ignite.
I'm sure you
remote.
do it all the time, Steve.
I do.
I'm sure
I
it
go
ignites
I
the
go,
fire in
bloop,
your soul.
YouTube, and then I go bloop, Steve Dangle Podcast, and I go bloop, fast forward to the parts where Steve talks and just mute Adam.
That's
great.
But not Jesse? What? Come on now.
No, we're cool. Right?
Yeah, we're good.
Whatever. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to call out a free agent's name, and you need to tell me if they should be worried or not worried. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Did you get that, or are you too busy video elbowing Jesse?
Which NHL free agents should be worried or not? Eid.
Yes.
I think is what
Exactly.
you said.
Exactly. So it's funny because on my end, nothing's freezing. So weird.
Well, yeah. It's your mouth.
Maybe it's your internet.
Whoa.
Okay,
it's
so first
probably
one.
Not.
Alex Pietrangelo. Worried or not worried? And we're talking about big payday here. Big contract, big payday. Would you be worried?
Yeah, because it's so funny how abruptly things changed because we were heading into the era of the double-digit player. And, we can talk about whether or not it's smart to sign a player Alex Pietrangelo's age to a $10+ million contract for 8 years. What is he, 28, 29?
30.
So he's 30, and he could easily be like, give me 8 years.
7
Give-
is the most he can ask, unless it's St. Louis.
Right. So he could, okay, give me 7 years, right? You know, there isn't much reason that he should be asking for a lot less than Erik Karlsson or Drew Doughty, or at least there wasn't until all this shit happened. And can a team like St. Louis afford him at, I don't know, $10 million a year for the next 7 years? I don't know. How many
And if
teams
not,
can?
Who can?
Who can? And then the salary cap throws a monkey wrench in there too. So the teams that can afford it financially actually can't, because they're probably already too close to the cap. And the teams that can't afford it financially just offer him less because that's all they can offer. And then all of a sudden you don't have any double-digit offers out there. So, I mean, he's going to be fabulously rich no matter what. That's besides the point. But we were heading into this era where, you know, we kept talking about, you know, oh, Matthews, Marner, Tavares. Yeah, they're all in the top 10 right now. But in a couple years, like, they'll be in lots of other players' dust. We were talking about Taylor Hall making $13 million. Now, he screwed that up for himself by, you know, just not scoring a whole bunch, and the Coyotes kind of tanked. But I just feel like it's not going to happen anymore.
The next person on the list is Taylor Hall. Worried or not worried?
Extremely worried, because there was a pandemic, and also his production before the pandemic was terrible. So
He doesn't have like 15 goals, right?
no,
He is 16, but he has the exact same amount of goals and points as Alex Pietrangelo.
Alex Pietrangelo was a friggin' defenseman.
Like Nick Robertson.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's played
like
5
Nick
more
Robertson.
games. Pietrangelo played 5 more games, but both of them have 16 goals and 52 points.
Pietrangelo won a cup.
Yeah.
And
And Hall's
matters.
supposed to be an elite scorer. What do you think his contract looks like? So you're saying worried for sure. I mean, he's made $6 million this year. How much of a raise does he get? Is it 8? And even at 8, does that not feel a little bit like, ooh, I don't know.
You know who kind of screws this up, or is a bit of a monkey wrench, like especially when it comes to forwards, is Jeff Skinner. Because what does he make? 9.5?
Yeah, but that's different era. And
Different
also
era.
different situation too, because the Sabres,
He scored 40.
Right, on a career high save percentage, like a bender. Right, he went through a crazy save
Shooting
percentage.
percentage.
Shooting percentage. That's what I mean. Sorry. And then the Sabres, who have a tough time keeping anybody, frankly, because they haven't won anything in a while, said, "Can't."
That's the Devils, though.
Yeah.
Oh wait, he's not on the Devils. I mean, the Coyotes kind of have trouble keeping guys too.
Yep.
Generally, OEL was, I guess, the first guy to really stay.
No,
at a big
Shane
number.
Doan, superstar Shane Doan.
Yeah, for sure.
Next, sorry, continue.
Well,
Steve,
I just would I offer Taylor Hall $9 million a year for the next 7 years? No, absolutely not. Would some team out there? Probably, but
maybe Arizona.
Wins mean, yeah, Arizona maybe, but then if there are no other offers out there, why would you offer him what he's asking for? Wins
Because
do
he'll
matter.
go play for Zurich, man.
Yeah. I forgot.
Darren
Oh, yeah,
Ferris
he's
is
a
his
Darren
agent.
Ferris client. Oh, great.
Next name.
He's
You
not
ready?
Someone will offer him the money, but wins matter, and he's won one playoff game his entire career.
Okay, next name. Torrey Krug. 29. Made 5.3 last year. Has 49 points, which is only 3 less than Taylor Hall.
Torrey Krug's 29.
Mm-hmm. I know. To me, he's forever young. I love Torrey Krug, by the way. I think he's my favorite defenseman on Boston. I just love the way he plays. Love his mobility. Is Torrey Krug going to make much more than 5.3? More than Char. Yep.
Damn.
Yep.
Krug is 29.
Yeah.
I had to see it for myself. That's freaking wild. He's got the baby face, and he's Boston. He's the Bruins in a nutshell. He doesn't need to be this big, tough meanie. The freaking guy's 5'9", 186 pounds. Hit someone. That's what I've been saying about the Leafs the whole time. You don't need a special skill set to hit someone. You just got to not give a fuck.
So the question is, and Jesse, feel free to weigh in on these too, man. Worried or not worried if you're Torrey Krug?
worried because I think the real golden era of the double digit player I think was supposed to be for D-men, just because they're so difficult to find.
But he's in a lefty, so it's not that hard to
yeah.
find.
No, but that matters though. That does matter. Like part of the reason, beyond the cups and the points and the trophies, that Drew Doughty and Erik Karlsson got the money they did is they happened to shoot right-handed. So I don't know. Like to me, actually, no, I would say less worried because everyone in Boston sort of took a discount anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's an opportunity to stay in a situation you really like for a long time with players that you
pretty
like,
good money.
Making
Like
pretty good money.
Even if he made 5.5, which is only a $200,000 raise, that's still a $16.5 million deal. Let's say, because if the cap is static for 81 for the next 3 seasons, right? If it's 81 million, 81 million, and 81 million, or 81.5 or whatever you want it to be. If I'm one of those guys, I'm like, I'll sign a 3-year deal. Whatever.
Well, and actually the Bruins, I think, would actually be the perfect situation for a guy to sign like a 3 or 4 year deal. Chara is 42. Backus is gone. Halak's the backup goalie. Bergeron's 34. Krejci is 33. Tuukka Rask is 32. Marchand even is 31. Or at least
How
this
does
is what
Bergeron
it's
still play like that at 34?
I know. And this is what it says on their Hockey DB page, which I think reverts to the number they began the season at. So a lot of these guys are probably older. I think Chara's 43. He is. He's 43. He turned 43 in March, just after the shutdown. So actually, Torrey Krug, I think, should be less worried than the rest of them because the Bruins might be the perfect situation to take a reasonable cap hit at 3 years.
Here's a question for 2 hockey minds that I think are more knowledgeable than mine, Adam and Steve.
Do we have someone else on this call?
Yeah, seriously.
Why do skilled right-handed defensemen seem to be more rare than left-handed skilled defensemen in the NHL?
That's a really good question.
I think it's that now, and I don't know this 100%, but I feel like I read somewhere that right-handed shots were just simply more rare. There are fewer right-handed shooting hockey players.
Like overall in hockey?
Yeah. What's it like in baseball? Like for pitchers and also hitters?
Most people are right-handed because the numbers are a lot higher than like the average of society. So you have a lot more left-handed people because you want specialists, but it's predominantly right on throwing and hitting. Yeah.
That's interesting because I feel like also for like boxing and UFC, like I'm like, oh wow, that guy's southpaw. Oh, that guy's southpaw. Oh, that guy's southpaw. But they rise to the top because they're special, right? So I don't know what it's like in hockey. I think the number. I was working on an article years ago. I don't think I ended up writing it, but I started doing the research for. It was like the top 20 scorers in the NHL, and over time, what percent of them were left shooting, and what percent of them were right. Because my theory is, as time has gone on, a higher percentage these days shoot right. Because it seemed to me, I always paid attention to who was right-handed because I shoot right-handed. And in video games, it is easier for me to shoot with a right-handed player because, like, when I play Be a Pro and stuff like that, I play right. I have I don't like playing as Austin Matthews because I have more difficulty with him because he shoots left.
Because you find moving the skill stick that way with your thumb is easier.
Yeah,
when you're deking, because that's the only difference, right?
Yeah, I used to always play as the Ducks because they had Getzlaff and they had Perry, and they had a few other guys who I can't remember, but I remember just looking at the league's leading scorers one day and being like, oh, there's Tyler Seguin and there's Alex Ovechkin and there's. And I remember just being like, this feels like more than it was in the past. Now, I never confirmed that. It might just be in my head. I don't know.
Interesting.
But like, I remember being an intern at Sportsnet and they were making jokes about, I want to say it was like Stefan Quintel. And they were like, well, he got the He got the right-handed tax. Like, because he got a big contract. I want to say it was like $5 million or something like that. In part because he was a defenseman who shot right. I guess just historically there aren't as many. That's got to be the reason.
Vladimir Malikov was. Remember that guy too, Vladimir Malikov. He was a pretty solid defenseman for the Canadians. I think he was another guy that was, big money. And actually, The Athletic did a really great article on Robert Svala too, another right shot defenseman that the Leafs kind of gave up the farm for, who just like played a season and was like, I think I'm out of here. and it's always been this thing with right shot defensemen. The Leafs have, and especially the Leafs, have never had a good one or one that they hung on to. I believe Larry Murphy was a right shot defenseman, but he was bounced out of town. And then I think Kenny Johnson was as well. And they traded him for Wendell Clark for the third go around, I believe. So bizarre.
Just for your note about lefties and righties in sports, Rafael Nadal, he's a right-handed person, but famously his left-handed his lefty shot is created by his uncle when he was a kid, because his uncle told him, hey, if you're left-handed, you're going to go further in tennis, just because it's so rare. So he does everything in his life with his right hand, but except for hit a tennis ball with a racket.
Wow.
Just because he thinks he's going to be better that way, and it's been that way since he was a child.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. Also, like I always love being goalie for street hockey, and almost all goalies catch left.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I had a glove, I would catch left with it. And I don't think when I got the same crappy set from Canadian Tire that everyone had, I don't think they even asked like which hand do you catch with. But now that I'm older, and if I'm playing with the dogs or whatever, and I'm like throwing a ball back and forth between my hands, I'm like, I'm way better with my right.
Right.
But that's rare though.
I feel like I've been catching with the wrong hand my whole life.
That's interesting, because if you're right-handed, you should catch with your left, because you want to have your right hand available to throw.
Right.
That's the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then my left arm to throw is absolutely useless.
Because you're right-handed.
So I guess that's why. It's not because I'm better at it. It's because I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
Larry Murphy was a left shot D, by the way.
I'm trying to think of the best right-handed Leaf defenseman of our lifetime. And I think it's extremely concerning that Dmitry Yushkevich is probably top 5.
I think Robert Svala probably was. Robert
top
Svala was
5?
really good.
Was Yushkevich? I don't know.
Yushkevich was right shot. And then to replace Svala, no, you know what? Who was the best one? Was Brian McCabe a lefty?
He was left.
Brian Leach. Brian Leach in our lifetime? Yeah. Especially with McCabe. He was outstanding. Absolutely insane. They were so good together, those two.
I thought Hockey DB said which side they shot. It doesn't matter.
I know, it never does. I know.
Thank you guys for trying to answer that question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, for 45 minutes.
Okay, so next I'm going to do 2 quick goalies, okay? And then we're going to move on to the press conference. You ready to go?
Yes.
Jake Markstrom, would you be worried?
Yes. Because not just he's going to get paid no matter what, and he's going to be in a situation he likes because teams need good goaltenders, but the pandemic has tightened pockets, and Sergei Bobrovsky screwed it up for everyone. Like, the huge money for goalies just isn't going to be there. And low-key in there, like, we're acting like Bobrovsky screwed it up for everyone. Man, Carey Price. That guy is getting best goalie in the league money, and he isn't. Like, we can talk about how the Montreal Canadiens don't have a great defense. They haven't had a great defense for a very long time. Like, they've had guys on D who have, good analytics, put up great offensive numbers, but as a team, have they been great defensively? Not really. Like, Yaroslav Halak, like, we don't remember that playoff run in 2010 because the team around him was awesome. We remember it because Yaroslav Halak came out of nowhere and made everyone say, screw Carey Price, put Halak in net. They started putting Halak on stop signs in Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like outside of the pandemic, just giving big money to a goalie doesn't make sense.
See, if I'm Markstrom, I'm not worried. And I'll tell you why.
Why?
Vancouver needs him.
Oh, the Canucks need him big time.
So if someone needs you, like St. Louis is still going to be a good team. The Coyotes will probably just go back to being the Coyotes without Taylor Hall. If Boston can't re-sign Torrey Krug, Boston will be fine. What's Vancouver without Markstrom?
Right, well,
It's not good.
We got a glimpse. Not
Not a good look.
They looked like a team. I've been bullish on them since the summer, and then Demko was their starter for a couple of weeks, and they friggin' fell in the toilet.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, if you don't want to be in the Vancouver Canucks position if they lose Markstrom, because then they're bidding on a guy like Robin Lehner, who we'll get to a second, who's a very good goaltender. But you know Markstrom, you know he works here, you know that you like him, and he, obviously he's 30, but without him, they looked like a very average, mediocre, fringe playoff maybe team. And that's where they are. That's where they're in the standings right now. So I think the Vancouver Canucks need Markstrom more than he needs them. And I think that they'll move out some of the worst. They have some of the worst mediocre salary in the league. But I would imagine that Antoine Roussel and Jay Beagle either get bought out, sent down, traded somehow. I just don't see how they hang on to those guys. And another name I would look at is Brandon Sutter. Whatever it is they have to do to clear room for Markstrom, I think they're going to do it.
Actually, it's funny you should say that. So we had Travis Green on for one of our Leaf watch parties we did. Because he was the first goal scorer in, I think it was game 2 of round 2 in 2002 against the Sens. And we asked who on the Canucks reminds you of you when you played. And he said Brandon Sutter. So that's a tough sell. For the Canucks. By the way, Saturday night is going to be another watch party. We're going to watch that ridiculous, spoiler alert, that ridiculous 8-6 game against Carolina from the Next Generation game.
If you're Robin Lehner, are you worried? He's making $5 million right now. He's got a .920 save percentage this year.
At what point do NHL teams look at Robin Lehner and just go, well, he stops pucks? Like, I mean, sometimes you look at players who bounce around a lot and you go, okay, what's this guy's deal or whatever. But it's, we saw with Frederik Andersen, it's difficult to go from team to team, right? We've seen with lots of players, it's difficult to go from team to team. Robin Lehner has gone from the Sabres to the Islanders, was amazing right away. And then he went from the Islanders to the Blackhawks and was amazing right away. He's a great goalie.
And in Vegas too.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Vegas goalie.
I forgot about that, man. He's a great goalie. He shouldn't be worried because he provides a service teams need. He's a great friggin' goalie. No great players should genuinely be worried. It's just, will you be more or less rich than you were going to be?
Right.
Whereas Lehner, it's weird he didn't. It's weird he ended up in Chicago.
I think people thought it was a one-off. I think people, because goaltending is so hard to predict, I think people thought, yeah, I'm going to need to see that again.
It was this past season, in retrospect, obviously, was the worst year ever to have a bet on yourself contract. And Lehner got one. You know who got screwed? Kevin
got $5 million.
LeBanc.
That's not so bad.
No. He didn't. No, but like you miss the security of having a long-term deal. Kevin LeBanc.
True.
Got boned. That guy last year had 56 points in 82 games at 23 years old. This guy signed a 1-year, $1 million contract. Then he's stuck on the shitty, very shitty San Jose Sharks.
That's crazy.
33 points in 70 games. He wasn't going to come close to 56. And now there's a friggin' pandemic.
$1 million.
$1 million. Like the big money's not going to be there. It's just, well, and the longevity. Oof! This guy, he's a minus 33?
He wanted to stay in San Jose to win. That was
the
thing.
second, okay, plus minus sucks. But Kevin LeBanc is a minus 33 on the Sharks. The next closest guy is minus 22.
I think at a certain point, plus minus does tell you something. I think there are more accurate ways to judge a player. But I
Yes.
think like when you get into the minus 10s, 20s, and 30s, you start to, I mean, maybe minus 10, you go, okay, some bad luck. But like minus 33 has to tell you something, right?
Yeah. Once you reach the extreme ends of plus minus, it means a little bit.
Yeah, it means
You can't just
should take
rule
a
it
second
out.
look.
Exactly.
Wow, that poor guy.
Okay.
Oh.
So with that, we'll continue going through that list because there's some guys at that list, including a couple Toronto Maple Leafs, that we're going to want to know about. But that'll be for next episode. Right now, press conference.
Can we do a quick Adam's History Corner?
Okay.
All right, because I have to ask this question because Ben Corrigan might have written the kindest Instagram DM ever. He said, I hope all is well with you. I'm not sure if Adam's History Corner is backed up, but Vimy Ridge Day just passed last week, which is a big day for Canada during World War I. If you can ask Adam if he wants to talk about it, but it's probably one of my favorite battles in World War I. Thanks and stay safe. That is so kind, Ben. So I
That's very
have
kind.
to ask, Adam, can you speak about Vimy Ridge?
Vimy Ridge is interesting. It's a very interesting thing because Vimy Ridge is essentially just a hill, right? It's a hill that the French couldn't take for 3 years, that the Canadians come in and they try a bunch of new things and they're able to take all. And then they turn it back over to the French and British, and the French and British lose the hill within like a couple weeks. And the thing about Vimy Ridge and why it's lionized the way it is in Canada, and any World War I historian will point to, much in the way Gallipoli, which is the aborted Turkish
Don't know
invasion
what
by
that
the
is.
Gallipoli is a peninsula near Istanbul that the British tried to land a bunch of New Zealand and Australian troops, Anzac troops at. And it turned into an absolute, like an 8-month slaughterhouse. It's awful. That's where national identities were forged for them. And instead of Remembrance Day, they have, I forget what they call it in Australia, but it's the morning that they invaded Gallipoli. That's the morning that's how they remember their soldiers in Australia and New Zealand. For us, Vimy Ridge is important because it was the first time a Canadian was ever put in control of a Canadian force. There's General Arthur Currie, who was seen as a bit of a renegade. You got a very conservative British hierarchy of generals, from Sir John French to then, at this point, I believe it was Douglas Haig. And they weren't changing anything. It's 3 years into the war. It's 1917. And they're like, you know what? Let's just keep throwing guys at the problem. And this guy says, well, why don't we try something? Let's try a rolling barrage, which is essentially, instead of, here's what you'd normally do. If Steve and I were going to battle, Steve would be in his trench. I would be in my trench. We'd be about 100 meters away from each other. And if I wanted to take Steve's trench, I would fire off an entire battery of artillery for a couple hours. So I'd just be firing shells at him. And Steve and all of Steve's buddies would be hiding underneath in little like caves that they dug out of the trenches. And these little like rooms, and they actually made them into pretty nice little spots. And they'd get really entrenched there. And so the bombardment would come off. And then here's what the British would do. They'd blow a whistle, the bombardment would stop, and everybody would rise up out of the trenches and run across no man's land. And we're talking about 12-foot deep shell holes, barbed wire, and machine guns. And there's no cover. So these guys are just like, okay, well, I hope we make it. And they did this for 3 years. And so
They just get like picked off at this point?
Yes.
When
Yeah,
you're
well,
going out to
imagine.
run
Okay,
it, yeah?
so you're in a German trench, and
Yeah.
a bunch of British guys come running at you, and you've got a machine gun, and they've got rifles, and they're running at you.
Yeah.
They're running straight at you. What are you going to do?
And
Right?
they're trying to get to like another trench ahead of them or something?
The Germans they're not moving, because on that front, on the Western front, the Germans were not doing anything. They were just holding the line at that point. They were trying to knock the Russians out of the war, which they did a pretty successful job at. Different story. That could be a half an hour tangent. So they were just holding the line.
At least.
And so what the Allies do is go, I guess we should try something else. So Arthur Currie goes in and says,
No.
after 3 years, ridiculous. It's World War I is it's ridiculous thing after ridiculous thing after ridiculous thing, and that's why I find it so fascinating. World War II is so heroic. There's such a good and a bad. In World War I, it's just tragic. It's tragic error after tragic error after tragic error. You go, why the fuck would they do that? Why the fuck would they do that? Why the fuck would they do that? And it's like, even when the war started, it's like the whole war started. Like, why the fuck is this even happening?
One of the things that really stuck out to me from Blueprint for Armageddon by Dan Carlin, which I think I'm going to re-listen to, and I highly recommend everyone listen to, or you could just listen to Adam, which I think is better and a little bit more concise, is, a few years into the war, I think it was like German soldiers, French soldiers, English soldiers, just all like, during breaks in the battle, literally just shouting across the field at each other going, why the fuck are we doing this?
Yeah, that was towards the end.
Yeah, why don't we stop? This is ridiculous. Who are we even fighting for? Who are we fighting against? I look at you and I don't see my enemy. I look at you and I don't see an enemy. What the fuck are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So they had been chewing each other up over this, kilometer or two stretch of land for a long, long time. And that was all the way down through Europe. So this particular hill, I think it was Hill 70, and it wasn't called Vimy Ridge. It was called Hill 70. I believe it was Hill 70. If I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry.
Right.
The reality was that this was a pretty, it was like, okay, well, it was a very minor thing, but there's two major things that happen. The first thing is you have a rolling barrage. So instead of, if I'm attacking Steve, okay, Jesse, does it make more sense for me to stop my cannons and blow a whistle and run at Steve so Steve knows I'm coming? Or do I keep my cannons going and roll them just a little bit in front of where the soldiers should be so that when the cannon shells pass over, right? Like, so when they pass over the trenches, the Canadians were right on top of the Germans, and that's what they did. It was called a creeping barrage. So they would essentially...
Wait, so the running at people who are shooting at you didn't work?
Strangely, no.
Okay.
Strangely, no. But it took them 3 years to figure that out. So they had this thing called a creeping barrage or a rolling barrage, whatever you want to call it. And so it was the barrage would move, and the soldiers would move behind it. So the second the barrage sort of stops in your section, all of a sudden the Canadians are on top of you, and they're taking your trenches. And so the Canadians were able to do this, and it's crazy to think. They were able to do this with what they deemed at the time as like minimal casualties. And I believe after like 2 or 3 days, they lost 20,000 people. Like, so you can imagine, I believe that's what it was. Vimy Ridge. Hang on, I'm going to look this up because that sort of stuff matters, right? Like
so the casualty
sorry, no.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm wrong on that. There were 20,000 on the German side. On the Canadian side, 3,500 Canadians dead, 7,000 wounded.
Wow.
And that's that's 4-day battle.
And they thought that was a little bit of people.
And that was, oh my God, how were they so efficient about it?
Wow.
And compare that, but you compare and contrast that to the Battle of the Somme, which on the first day saw 50,000 losses. 50,000 on an assault that lasted for 8 months. It was an improvement. It was sort of like, whoa, look at this. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of the war, Canadians were seen as some of the best shock troops in the empire. So when the British Empire really existed, Canadians were, they kind of exhausted all their young men, and British youth were not eating as well as, say, Americans and Canadians were. So you have these Canadian strapping young farm boys coming in after 3 years of exhausting British troops, and these guys, they're well-fed, they're energetic, they're pumped to be there, and they become sort of the shock troops of the British Empire. And they were known as, I forget what they were called, but anyway, the British the Germans knew to look out for them.
Yeah, it was like, oh shit, they're Canadians.
Yeah, the Canadians are shit. And so anyway, Vimy Ridge, after the war, the Canadian government didn't know how quite to honor the Canadian sacrifices throughout the war. There were better battles. There were more efficient battles, especially towards the end of the war, that Canadians were involved with, ones that were more pivotal to what ended up happening and the armistice and everything else. But they chose Vimy Ridge because it was the first time Canada took control of Canada. It wasn't just we were sending, boys over to fight under England. It was Canada controlled Canada's destiny in this small part. And that's when a lot of people say the Canadian true national identity was forged, at least for a certain segment of the population. Vimy Ridge is lionized for that reason. And I think it's important that when the day comes up, and it's unfortunate that it was sort of distracted from with the pandemic going on, it's important that we realize why, right? it's not because it was some glorious victory. It was, I guess, it was a relatively small conflict. But the point was Canada got to control Canada, which was unthinkable 3 years beforehand. And that was a seminal event in our history. And that is why Vimy Ridge is so important. And there you have it.
There you have it.
Well said.
There you have it.
All right.
Yeah.
Final thing here. Two things, actually. Next episode, we are going to do something special. Nick Chapman alerted me to the fact that The Bachelor is coming out with a new show.
How?
It's called The Bachelor, Listen to Your Heart.
Oh, no.
So,
Oh, no. Oh, no. Is it Love is Blind but The Bachelor? Oh, no. It's Love is Blind.
It is not. So it has to do with, hold on, let me, just give me a second to pull up the description of the show. Listen to Your Heart about.
It's going to be like entirely on Zoom, and there's going to be like a big controversy in episode 5 or 6 where they realize someone's been using a filter the whole time to look hot.
The Bachelor presents Listen to Your Heart, unites two of the most emotionally powerful forces in human life: music and love.
No.
Are they
as-
no.
As
no.
20 single
No.
men and women embark on an incredible journey to find love through music, singing
gonna sing at each
well-known
other?
songs,
No.
both individually and as couples. They will look to form attractions through the melodies, find and reveal their feelings, and ultimately fall in love.
That's the worst idea I've ever heard. That's the worst idea I've ever heard.
So The Bachelor is going to do a Bachelor singing season.
But are they going to do it over Zoom? Like, how are they doing it?
And I think it's already been filmed. It's just coming out.
God.
Someone thought this was a good idea before we got desperate for content?
Because
Dude, BFR.
the first episode aired on the 13th, which was Monday. So the first episode's out, and I think it's already been filmed. So they're just releasing the episodes here.
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we're gonna read the bios on Sunday.
Oh my God.
All right. Hey, also, we should mention Friday night, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Oh, hey. Yep.
Friday night. Steve Dangle, for the survival of the Steve Dangle hockey team name, takes on I think they're called, what do we call the extra toasties or something? What do
Extra
we call it, Jesse?
toasties.
You don't friggin' know your own
So
team.
Pete Blackburn's team is
Your
called the
own
Extra
team.
Toasties, and we are joining.
We somehow were co-opted into Pete's team, but it's going to be Pete Blackburn's team versus Steve Dangle's team, and really the thing is that it was just we were just upset that Steve didn't invite us to the Dangle Navy team.
Very upset.
So whatever team loses can no longer use that team name. They can no longer play as that team.
Mm-hmm.
So if Steve loses this, no more Dangle Navy. And this will take place over 2 Fridays. We're going to play 3 games Friday night, this one, and then we're going to play the last 4, if needed, the next time.
yeah,
So you'll be able to check it out.
Pete and I sort of talked about that. Like one of us could sweep the other, but we'll still we'll just keep playing for funsies.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but we don't want to know if there is a sweep in the works. We're not going to find out till the second Friday anyway.
Yeah, because
Right.
we'll do we won't play enough games to have a sweep, right?
Right.
Right.
Not on the
So-
first one.
Steve,
But I'm
exactly.
saying the second one will be worth watching whether someone's up 3-0 or not. Plus it's friggin' video games and
Yeah,
who
so-
knows? You could easily erase
Steve, why
that.
do you have to sell? You don't have to sell that.
Oh, I'm just
People are
So-
going to be jacked, man.
Yeah,
I just
Friday
had so many
night-
messages.
9 p.m. on Friday night, live on YouTube and Twitch. Did Pete said
Twitch
he
for
wanted to do-
sure. Twitch
Okay.
for sure. I think it'll be on my channel. There's going to be a charity aspect. We're figuring out the logistics there. There's going to be 3. We're going to try to make money for 3 different charities, but we're going to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
we're gonna figure it out. There's still a couple logistical things we got to figure out.
All right.
right.
Well, Dangle Navy's
looking forward to
jacked.
more.
We got a group chat on Twitter, and we're talking about strategies and different swarms.
All right,
and
so here's the
crap.
plan. Ian, you're going to play defense, but the entire time you're going to be in front of the net.
Listen,
Let's go.
Ian
I can't
is,
wait, man.
Ian is okay. I should retract something I said about Ian as a player. Ian is a great defenseman to have on your team when you're down a goal. which you often are because you have Ian on your team. But like I just sit back because I'm untalented, so I just try to be good positionally defensively. And then if you need an extra attacker, friggin' that guy's gonna get you a goal.
Great front net defenseman.
Yeah.
Hey,
He's
when
the
the
defenseman
Bruins
I
tied
want
it
tipping
up,
pucks in.
when the Bruins tied up Game 7 in 2013, Zdeno Chara was right in front.
That's right. That's right. He's the James Van Riemsdyk of defensemen.
Easily. And just as bad defensively as James Van Riemsdyk.
All right. I'm so excited.
Oh, one more question. So we got before. I thought you were going to wrap up the show.
No,
One
I'm
more
ready.
thing.
I'm ready. What's the question?
Okay. We have trivia from Devin London.
Oh.
So he adapted this game from a podcast called Football Ramble Daily. Never heard of it. I'm sure it's not as good as the Steve Dangle podcast.
Couldn't be.
I'm going to give you hints. Each round, I'll give you a hint, and you get one guess as to the Leaf player. A former, past Leaf player. So we keep giving hints until one of you guesses the player. First hint. I was born on March 16th, 1988.
Okay.
Do you have a guess?
No.
Round one, you get a guess every round. You can just take a whack at it.
Oh, you get a guess every round?
You get a free guess every round.
I'm going to... Well, I know I'm wrong, though. James Reimer was born March 15th, 1988.
Adam, who's your guess?
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't understand the game.
You just got to guess the
gotta
Leaf
guess.
player.
Guess
It's
the
like
Leaf
21
player.
questions.
Who's our age, basically.
Oh, what the hell? Oh, my God.
If you get this in one question, Steve, I'm going to be upset. Because there's 9 questions.
Oh, my God. What the frig is this guy's name?
You've already had your guess for round one, though.
Yeah. Oh, he was a Leaf for a hot minute. Fuck.
Adam, do you have a guess for round one? Just any.
Is this any Leaf?
Any Leaf?
Oh, my God. What the hell is this guy's name?
Born in 1988.
Tyler Bozak?
No. Next
right.
question. I won the bronze medal in 2005 in the World Juniors.
Oh, fuck. I'm out. I don't know. I don't know any of it. I'm terrible at this stuff.
No, I'm going to keep adding on.
They won bronze in 2005?
They won bronze, and this player won bronze in 2005 at the World Juniors. The first hint was they're born
The
in
under
1988.
20s?
World Juniors.
Wasn't 2005 the dream team with like Perry and Crosby and
They
Maybe
won.
he's not a Canadian.
Yeah, what are you? They could be from anywhere.
Oh,
He's just a Leaf. I didn't say he played for Team Canada.
okay.
He was born. All right. Do you want me to move on to round 3?
Yeah, move on.
Both of you. All right. I was drafted in the first round of the 2006 NHL draft. So your 3 hints so far. 2006 first round draft pick. 2005 they won World Juniors. They won bronze at the World Juniors.
I'm pretty sure
They're born
I'm
in
wrong.
1988.
Pretty sure I'm wrong, but I'll say Phil Kessel.
Incorrect. Adam, do you have a guess? Steve took one guess. You got a free guess.
I think it's like a Swedish or Finnish guy.
For everybody playing along at home, I hope you have already guessed it correctly. And you haven't looked anything up. That would be cheating. And if you're cheating against yourself, you are no fun.
Michael Tellquist.
Incorrect. Question answer round 4. Hint 4 is what the word I was looking for. Hint number 4. In my NHL debut, I scored 2 goals, including the game winner. It was a 5-2 win over the Pittsburgh Penguins.
This is a former Leaf?
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Williams.
Steve, what's your guess? This player played for the Leafs. NHL debut, scored 2 goals. 2006 first round draft pick. 1 bronze at the World Juniors.
Yeah. He wouldn't be a first round draft pick.
Yuri Talusti?
Steve Dangle, everybody.
Yes. Yes.
Yuri Talusti.
2 goals?
In his first, in his NHL debut.
Oh, I don't remember that at
I
all.
always felt like the Leafs should have hung on to him.
They should have. They I did a trade tree recently. One of the guys the Leafs gave away for Christopher Stieg when they got him from Chicago was Philippe Paradis, who they got for Christopher Stieg. And Philippe Paradis, despite being a former first-round pick, never played in the NHL.
Mm-hmm. You know what's weird about Yuri Tolusti is that he comes from a different era of media. So this is back when it was totally cool to print nude shots of guys when it came out online, and he was
were 17.
Yeah, the guy's 17, and the Toronto Sun put him on the cover, naked with his junk blurred out. Like, and that was okay back then. It's so weird, right? Like,
Yeah.
if they did that today, like, if they'd be hauled into a court, whatever. Back then, it was just sort of like, well, I guess it was weird. It's weird how that happened.
Oh, I guess, man. This guy, Yuri, like, he didn't have an amazing NHL career, but like, freaking guy played.
Yeah.
446 career games, 177 points. It's pretty shitty to get a guy who never played a single game in exchange for him.
Yeah,
That
you
was
traded away
13th
500
overall.
games.
What?
Yep.
Did you guys like that game?
Games.
If you guys like that game,
I didn't quite get it, and then I got it.
And then you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll come up with a different player, or somebody can send me a different player for next episode, and we'll play that
I like
one again.
that.
Here, I just need to make sure I was right about Reimer. I was March 15th.
That's a little weird.
Goddamn right.
I'm
The other
uncomfortable.
guy I was thinking of, and I for the life of me couldn't, Byron Frazee.
Oh.
And the reason I was thinking Byron Frazee is because his birthday is March 12th, which is my birthday, except he was born in 1991. There you go. All right. Habs legend, Byron Frazee.
Yuri Tolusti had a really good lockout season. 23 goals in 48 games.
Dude, he was a good player. They gave him away for shit
too
all.
bad that season doesn't count.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if he'd won the cup. How
Wait.
disappointed he'd be.
He had 23 goals in the lockout shortened season?
Yeah, he had 38 points in 48 games.
What the frig?
Yeah, I know.
What a shitty trade.
You could you could say that about the Leaf slots, and there's been lots written about that. How terrible they were. So
you sure could.
anyway, kids, thank you so much for listening. We will see you Sunday afternoon after the first 3 games of our little super series have played. Steve, are you ready to lose? Are you ready to lose Dangle Navy forever?
No, I'm not, so I won't.
Do you have any other names you think you're going to call your team once you lose?
Yeah.
The
Dangle
Steve Dangle
Navy.
losers?
Dangled, Nave, E. Tupac. Pete's going to have to change his name to the Toasteds. All right, end the show.
All right, bye.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Brought to you by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness. Connection complete.